Okay, in this video I want to talk about another postmodernist peg or idea that, if just examined in isolation for an item analysis, can give us insight to the whole picture when we put it back into its place of the puzzle. And in this video I want to talk about the active representation. And I think the postmodernist is going to very keenly sense or be aware of the fact that he or she is living in an acting space, or at least in an acting dynamic. And part of the adherence to this is the philosophical understanding, just because of how we've come to understand color and optics and that sort of thing, that everything that we see is a mental construct based on sensory data, and we are trusting that the grid or the representation that our mind gives us of the space we are in correlates, because we need to know where that chair is, or where the wall is, or where the road is. So, and in our experience, we do sense that things correlate, because when we move to the left to go through the door, we don't hit our heads on the door frame and that sort of thing. But in its extreme examination, you could still tie all that into a mental construct, because when you do hit your head on the door, it really is related to you only as, again, mental information, the sensory responses of pain and pressure and that sort of thing. And when you see blood come out, you see that blood only because of the photons and the sensory inputting of the brain too. So, in an extreme analysis, again, you must be able to admit that all of that can be manufactured by the brain. So, did you really hit the door? You thought you were going to hit it, so as soon as you closed the distance, your brain created the illusion of pain and of blood and of so forth. So you're sort of stuck in this thing. And you realize that if you do believe in a material, external, objective space full of entities that exist when you close your eyes, that continue to exist when you close your eyes, you hold on to that by faith, because it is a presupposition that cannot escape the possible reinterpretation of that state of affairs. So this has been suggested to us by enough songs, and especially enough movies with the special effects, and that we are used to this notion of of living in a constructed space. Again, we very often, especially when we aren't thinking in these terms, we'll treat it as the real space, but we sort of understand that yes, this could be sort of a phenomenological construct. So the postmodern, the way this is going to play out is that the postmodern is going to become aware that, and in this way, it's not necessarily a new idea, but this is where it's going to be stripped of some of its negative material or negative aspects. All right, this whole notion of you can be one way on the appearance of things, right? But that doesn't necessarily signal an identity or correspondence with what's on the inside. So, think in terms of matching. You match the outside with the inside, and when you talk about someone as, oh, the person is sincere, or the person is what you see is what you get, is transparent, and that sort of thing, people are trying to say, what you get when you interact with this guy or this gal, and the facial expressions and the commitments and the words really do signify the internal intent to be faithful to those signifiers, those signs, so but just in using that language, the only reason those words make sense is that we understand that the possibility of complete dissimulation, or being one way on the outside and another way completely on the inside, is possible. So we have become used to thinking of well, the possibility of acting, all right, and watching ourselves act and thinking ourselves as actors when we interact with others, because they're automatically put into an audience space, and we, whenever we talk or bring ourselves to the fore or present ourselves to them, we take on the space of an actor. Now, to be consciously thinking of that as you interact with others is to be sensing the burden of what it means to be postmodern, and then to eventually embrace it and use it for your own means, your own advantages, or to forget the fact that maybe that's not the best way to go about life, but instead to think of it in terms of a useful, set of tools for you. So this would lead into, say, the replication of the self in the ways of, okay, the crafting of an image, let's see, and the compartmentalization of your interactions with others. Okay, now this is what I mean. Let's say you begin to get some sort of celebrity status in the media, in the eyes of the media, and then you realize you're on TV, and you're also on pictures and in magazines, and you're thinking to yourself, only a few people actually get to meet me in person, but thousands are meeting me through the image space. So when it actually comes to, say, voting, or the power that I might have as an individual in my voice, in the way I influence others, it's really in the larger space that I have that voice that can move the collective, the masses, the people groups. So it's very, very important to me that in the image space, I look my best. I stay away from those iffy scenes or being around those strange people that aren't necessarily accepted and welcomed in the press. So I need to be very careful of how I look, how I dress, and who I'm with when I get videotaped or snapshot as a picture. So at that point, you realize, hey, I'm making copies of myself, through the video camera, through the pictures, or somebody's making copies of me, and they're not really me, but for all practical purposes, I guess they really are me, because that's the only me people, as in terms of the public, is going to run into, and they're going to use all this to form their own identity of me. So I may as well just realize that is where the genuine effects of how I'm going to relate with the people, that's where it's going to happen. So, at this point, a person might become very, very concerned about the image, the collage of images that the press is putting together about him or her, and not necessarily too concerned at all, really, about the real person, because there's so few people that are actually connected to the real person. Now, the unfortunate problem with that is that the people that are connected to the real person are usually very important to that real person, like the parents or the children or the wife, the spouse, the husband, brothers and sisters. But these, that sort of interaction gets downgraded for the image space, and this is where you would reduplicate yourself over and over again. All right. Now, what about something like compartmentalization of personality? Okay, now this is what I mean. If you realize, hey, I'm going to meet this group of people on these days of the week to do this activity. Say it's a job. This is the only time they're going to see me. Now I need to be a certain way here in this space with these people so that I can get what I need to get done, or so things can go smoothly, so I can get my paycheck, or I get my experience, or I get my network going, or whatever. Okay, so that's how you are going to be in the job. But then you realize, after hours, I have a group of friends I like to hang out with. And we go to my apartment, or we go to my room, or we go to my house, or whatever. I go to theirs, and we play games, or we watch sports, or whatever. Okay? You realize, these people see me in that way, and I can present a different self to them, because it doesn't seem like we ever mix together as a small village would anymore. I mean, in a small village, everyone is watching everyone 24/7, right? But think of how we are now. I mean, we come back to a closed box that's often called our house. We often don't even know who our neighbors are. I mean, beyond the surface level stuff. And then we get in our cars, another isolated activity, go to our work, and we just stay there in that room or that floor or that building, and then we're done. We get back in our cars and we come back to our house, which is enclosed in the four walls. And within a very crowded metropolitan space, we are very lonely and individual, isolated people because of the cubicle structure and the travel structure. So, you begin to realize I have all these different rooms in my life, and if I want to, I can be one way in one room, and then I can switch and be another way in this other room, the nightlife room, the work room, and how about the church room? When I grew up going to church, so now I go to church just, or maybe you just sense, hey, or it could be just a social group. There's a social group that I go to meet with to talk about community service, let's just say the church here, and I got to be one way there. I'm going to act a certain way. I'm going to dress a certain way. But, and then maybe at a community team sporting event, or maybe you're a parent and you have your children in the, local soccer league, and you realize, these people are getting to know me because I always show up to watch my child play, and so they view me as a working professional, and they don't know much about, contractor work or financial services or healthcare, so they kind of view me with maybe more of a respectful aura than I merit, and I'm going to play that up, and I'll be the professional here, and also the concerned parent, and you can do a lot of stuff. And what happens is that you always end up being for the sake of an audience. And if your life is filled with these separate audience groups, and you realize I have 5 or 6 separate stages that I can perform upon, and these groups don't interact, so they're never really going to get this. They won't necessarily have to see the conflicting versions of me, and this is the version they're more comfortable with, so I'm going to present it to them there in that way. You realize that when it comes to the actual interface that we call our interpersonal relationships, it's only these versions that you present people with that ever produce any practical consequences, positive or negative. So at one point you sit back and say, if it's always going to be that interface level that I connect with people on, who really cares about the real nexus or the real seed, core, kernel of me? Okay, back here. Now, see, again, I'm not saying this is just how you do it. I'm just saying this may be how you do it. I don't know. The readings tend to suggest that the postmodern is going to do it this way. Okay, and so you do have the idea that there is a person that has introspected long enough so that he or she has settled down to a core set of values and beliefs, and they have committed to it. They have actually perhaps even written a credo or something like that, and they've tried to understand who they are, and they somehow have found, either through an external agent or whatnot, but they seem to be consistent with this. And these people, no matter where they are, because they believe in certain values, they're going to act along those values on the soccer team, at the doctor's office, in the hospital, at work, in traffic, with this group of people and with that group of people. And even though those groups will never meet, if they were ever to meet, they would say, oh yeah, that does sound like X, because he's the very same way here. We're in different situations, we're different people groups, but he's the very same person in all these different rooms. He's or she's constantly this way. Okay, so those people, I would have to say, they're not in the postmodern condition. The postmodern person is going to be, no one really cares about the real me, and frankly I don't even know the real me, because I seem to be changing so much, and it just seems that when it comes down to what actually profits me or hurts me in terms of consequences, it's what happens in these interface spaces where I can represent myself one way to a group of people, and as long as I flow with that and they flow with that, we're okay. And then I can be someone completely else in another space, at another day, in another room, with another group of people. I'm using the word room figuratively. So this other group might be the people at the restaurant you work with, whereas this other group might be the students in your classroom right now, that you're sitting next to. So these two groups don't ever mix, really, and you realize I can be separate people here. I can act different ways here. And you begin to embrace that multiplicity of activity, and then you begin to verbalize and articulate certain beliefs that are accepted in one space but not in another. And you're like, I don't care if they contradict. They don't contradict at the same time, because I'm here on Monday and here on Thursdays, and people, I know not to mix the rooms, so I can be different people in these different rooms. And if you are beginning to embrace that as a practical skill, in fact, or as a something that you can do, and in fact you kind of are doing it and sort of enjoy doing it, that's symptomatic of a postmodern posture.